Welcome everybody, this is Barry Johns and this is Studio Talk. Today we're going in the ring. We've got two teams going out for battle today. Each one of them's got three heavyweight contenders on each side. It's gonna be a tag team to the death. The end of the day over in this corner over here, we've got Protools. You know, that pesky little DAW that's been around since the days of Adam and Eve. You know, that one everybody loves to hate, but lots of people use anyway. In this corner over here, we've got the new up-and-coming kid. The one that's trying to get his gang on. He's trying to learn all the ropes. You know, that little Universal Audio Luna. All right, now back over here in this Pro Tools, same over here, we've got Carbon. Carbon, that new up-and-coming competitor, that bad boy that does a combination of HDX and your computer's horsepower. Over here with Luna, we've got that paired up with the tried and true Universal Apollo. You know, that little bad boy that's got great conversion these days and being able to use that DSP processing on board for the plugins. It's gonna give Pro Tools a run for its money. Carbon versus Universal Audio Apollo. Now these guys are backed up by some pretty heavyweight plugins. Over here, we've got Brainworx / Plugin Alliance and McDSP. Let's focus on Brainworx and Plugin Alliance. You know, they make some incredible plugins out there, and the majority of their plugins are AAX DSP compatible, which means you can use them with Pro Tools and that bad boy Carbon with its built-in HDX DSP processor. But over here, we've got the king of the hill of plugins. You know, Universal Audio plugins. They're the best. They're the best you can buy. That's what everybody says. And it works perfect with that Apollo. And it's laid out to work perfect in that Luna because it's a combined system that's meant to kick everybody's butt. But let's don't forget that Brainworx over here with those DSP plugins writes a lot of Universal Audio plugins. So I think today Brainworx can give Universal Audio plugins a run for their money. So at the end of the day, which one would you choose? You want to go with Pro Tools, Carbon, and Brainworx / Plugin Alliance? Or do you want to go with Luna, Universal Audio Apollo series, tied up with their amazing plugins? Let's battle this bad boy out and see who the last one standing is. Okay, so back to reality here. Hope you like the way I kind of queued that up. I did have some fun doing it. You know, I had to pull out my son's boxing gloves from out in the garage where he's got a boxing, you know, a bag out there, whatever you call that thing. You know what I mean? But anyway, I hope you had a lot of fun with that. But this is an interesting discussion, isn't it? You know, when you think about if you're going to go with some kind of DSP-based solutions, ultimately, when you look at price compared to price, you know, the Apollo 8 with 8 mic preamps is about $300 cheaper, if I remember, than Avid's Carbon interface. So ultimately, at the end of the day, they're kind of neck and neck as far as features and everything like that are concerned. They both provide onboard DSP processing and both allow you to use your computer's horsepower for everything else. Now, over here with Universal Audio, you know, you can only use their plugins with their DSP. Any other plugin you're going to use in the computer has to be a non-Universal Audio plugin. Over here with Brainworx and Plugin Alliance, at the end of the day, you know, you can use those interchangeably back and forth. Now, you also have more DSP plugins over here to use with Avid and Carbon than you do with Universal Audio. But let's face it, Universal Audio makes some great, amazing plugins. I mean, that's your motivator to go with an Apollo ultimately is because you want to be able to use those amazing Universal Audio plugins. But like I said in the intro, Brainworx actually writes a lot of those great plugins for Universal Audio. So when it comes to that, you're pretty much got apples and apples. Yes, there are those out there that say that the Brainworx version doesn't sound quite as good as a Universal Audio. And I'm going to say you're full of it. I don't buy that crap for a second. You're just trying to make yourself believe what you want to believe. At the end of the day, they're fantastic plugins. So this is going to boil down. Let's talk about the plugins. I think we've got some neck-to-neck competition between Brainworx Plugin Alliance and Universal Audio plugins. Universal Audio's probably got the bump on that one overall, I would say, but at the end of the day, you got some stiff competition. Now, as far as interfaces go, again, one's $300 less than the other, but in that price range, that's fairly marginal at the end of the day, and I don't think it's worth it. Now, in the Apollo, you've got 8 unison pre's that can be used with their emulation mic preamps, which I think that you get a good bump with that. But in the Carbon, from all the specs and everything, those mic preamps built into the Carbon are pristine. Both of these interfaces also give you DB25 connections on the back for 8 line in and 8 line out. So if you want to be able to incorporate some hardware inserts into it, but also be able to use the mic preamps when you're not using that respective channel, you can do that on both. Now, where these two differ is their connectivity. You've got the Carbon over here. I keep pointing over there like I'm still pointing at a ring, but you've got Carbon, which connects via Ethernet. And then, you've got Universal Audio connects via Thunderbolt. Now, ultimately, assuming both drivers are stable, I would say the future is better with Ethernet simply because you can do those runs further than you can Thunderbolt. The cables are ridiculously cheaper on Cat 5, Cat 6 versus Thunderbolt cables. And then also you don't have to worry about the next version of Thunderbolt 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 25. Ethernet's going to be what it is. So ultimately, Ethernet's going to give you your fastest throughput of any of them out there. So I think future-proof, Ethernet is the way to go. So ultimately, you can double up and pair multiple Apollos together and be able to increase your I/O. As of today, you can't do that with Carbon, but Avid says that's coming in the future. Avid also says they're going to be incorporating the ability to do surround sound with Carbon, and so that's another potential positive for Carbon. So now let's break it down into your DAW of choice. Pro Tools obviously has the head start here. Like I said, they've been around since Adam and Eve. They've got recording audio. You're talking audio, and if that's your main gig. I'm not talking about MIDI and virtual instruments, but if you're doing audio, I would argue there's no better DAW on the planet than Pro Tools. It's laid out logically. It performs fabulously. At the end of the day, yes, Avid doesn't get all the new bells and whistles as quick as other DAWs do, but when you get it, it's going to be fairly solid, okay? So you've got that aspect. Now you've got Luna over here, which is a constant evolvement. Universal Audio is putting a lot of effort into developing that DAW, and did I mention that it's free if you buy an Apollo interface? So that's another benefit. So you're going to get your updates for free and all those things. And so that has some compelling aspects of that. But it's still in its infancy. It's probably been out maybe almost a year at this point. Don't quote me on that. But it hasn't been out very long, so they're still developing it. When you go into forums, you find as much critical of it as you do praise of it. But, I would argue, too, finds lots of critical and praise for Pro Tools as well. You have to excuse me there. So I think when it comes to that, I think DAW Pro Tools gets the bump up, and I'll have to say by a long shot at this point, but that's going to be narrowing down as Universal Audio progresses, because obviously Universal Audio has a lot of motivation to really get Luna great, following in the traditions of PreSonus and Studio One. But the difference between PreSonus and Universal Audio is if they get that Luna up there, they've already got their plugins that sell their interface. If they can get that DAW going at the level of its competitors at the end of the day, with all of the features that we expect at these days and honestly demand, if they continue to do that, that's just another tool, because that's free updates for everything that makes it a little more compelling to buy a Universal Audio interface. Now, as far as conversion is concerned, I think Carbon's got to step up from that. I think the conversion, the analog to digital and digital analog converters on the Carbon are a step up from Universal Audio, but Universal Audios are no slouch. When they first came out, the analog to digital was good, but the digital analog was lacking, and so they've corrected that. And I think they're on their 3rd incarnation of the Apollo, if I remember correctly, but that doesn't really matter. But the bottom line is you're going to get solid performance out of either one of these boxes at the end of the day. Yes, you have more plug-in options going the Protools, Carbon, Brainworx plug-in alliance. Don't forget McDSP. And there's some other ones out there, and then of course you've got the amazing plugins with Universal Audio. So ultimately at the end of the day, you're going to have to decide which one better suits your needs. Yes, do you want to get in bed with Avid with their history of not really taking care of customers and never listening to customers? Or would you rather get in bed with Universal Audio, who is always listening to their customers, or always wanting to hear as much as they can about how they can improve their products? That's another thing that you've got to consider, because at the end of the day, price is not that different. Now, you're going to pay for Pro Tools, so keep that in mind. But currently today, now I don't know how long this is going to go on for, but you can if you buy a Carbon, you're going to get Pro Tools Ultimate for free. But what's going to happen, and that can be a compelling reason for a lot of people. I've got another video out there on that. You should go watch it. But that could be a compelling reason potentially for you. But at the end of that year, you're going to have to pay $400 every year to keep that up to date. Now, a couple times a year, Avid comes out with a 20% off sale. So you can get that down to $320 or something like that. But you're still going to be paying that at the end of every year. So that's a downside going with Ultimate. It normally comes with Pro Tools native and a subscription to that, not a perpetual license. In other words, you have it for a year. At the end of that year, if you don't keep paying that subscription, you don't have it anymore. You don't have any access to it. Whereas with the Ultimate, you're going to get a perpetual license, which means if you don't pay to renew that, you're going to remain at the version you're on, and you could just continue on forever with that if that's what you want. Otherwise, you're going to have to pay the annual, let's call it $320, because you're going to get it 20% off a couple of times a year. But if you're paying the native subscription, you're roughly going to pay that anyway. Okay, you're going to pay that anyway. So there's pros and cons either way, so you've got to decide which better suits your workflow. You've got more flexibility over here with Avid, Pro Tools, and Carbon, along with Plugin Alliance. Their subscription plan is killer. I'm not typically a huge fan of subscription plans, but what they offer is killer, because they give you a voucher at the end of the year that's almost the equivalent of what you paid, that you can buy, and you can use that at retail. Even if plugins are on sale, you can still buy them at the cheaper rate, which is even better. So it kind of makes that a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you go that route? And their plugins are freaking phenomenal, and they are definitely on par and offer more variety than you can get with Universal Audio. So at the end of the day, I don't think you're going to go wrong with either one. I think it's the one that suits your needs the most. Universal Audio is coming up. They just bought Townsend Labs. And so if you, later on, they're going to start incorporating that into their DSP and everything. To be able to even expand upon that, they're even going to take that to the next level. And I would argue that Townsend Labs completely slays Slate. That's hard to say. Slate with their VM1. I've got a VM1 over there, and it's not a bad microphone. It's not as good as Steven Slate's marketing, his little slick little stuff going on over there, but it's a solid performer, and for the price, you really can't beat it. But I'd rather spend, $300 or $400 more and get that Townsend Lab. Of course, the downside of that is you got to use 2 tracks for each one of those. Never quite understood why, but hey, I just got to trust that that's the way it works, and that's the way it needs to work, and I'm just going to have to shut up and deal with it. So at the end of the day, we got some heavy hitters in the ring today. Which one do you think's going to win this bout? Put that down in the comments below. Let me know which one of these two you think will win. Tell me which one of these two you think are going to dominate. Tell me which one of these two you think are going to get their butts knocked out in the first round. It's going to be like Mike Tyson, baby, back in the day. You're lucky if you can last 30 seconds, maybe, or it's going to go 15 rounds. Don't forget, we got tag team boxers coming in and out. Going to drag that thing out a little bit more, because you got to look at the fighter, each one of those fighters on the team, to really figure out how that whole team's going to work out, if you get what I'm saying. So anyway, if you like the things I talk about on this channel, there's the whole like, subscribe, notification bell down below. I'd appreciate it if you'd select those things, help me grow this channel, so maybe I can go out and buy an Apollo and a Carbon at the same time, make enough money to do that. I'm still at my infancy. I'm lucky if I can get enough to buy a cheeseburger right now. But anyway, thank you for your support. I really appreciate it all, and I hope every single one of you have a great, fantastic day.